Instructional Designers in Offices Drinking Coffee is brought to you by Domino, makers of Domino One, the all-in-one, cloud-based e-learning authoring tool for teams. You can learn more at domino.com. Now, here's this week's episode.
There it is.
Get the old heart pumping on a Wednesday morning.
Sometimes it's hard to feel like a professional when you're dancing in your chair, but you just can't. You can't not when the music comes on a Wednesday on Idiotic, right?
Exactly. Just as long as people don't confuse us with being professional dancers, although I think there's limited possibility of that. I think
you never know. We could be starting a trend.
We could be. Get us out on that talk or ticker or whatever thing, that the youngins are doing these days.
The ticker torker or something like that.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys send in your videos of yourself chair dancing during Idiotic's intro. And, you could win a new Idiotic mug.
And a free subscription to Idiotic. Lifetime subscription.
Oh, yes, we missed all the weather reports coming in. Wow, look at this. What we got? Raleigh, North Carolina. Good morning. How's the weather there, Tara?
Hot in Central Valley of California today.
Ooh, I'll bet. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. Rainy in Atlanta. Well, there's a shocker. Good times. Well, hey, speaking of locations, Chris, we have a guest, and he's probably in a location somewhere.
Yes,
Who's with us today?
No kidding. Folks, we have David Vance joining us today. David, it's your first time with us. You're joining us from Colorado. You said about an hour north of Denver. So tell us your weather report, and then maybe also introduce yourself, since folks haven't met you here before.
Well, a pleasure to be on with you today. Never seen quite an opening just like that. So I like the energy that you bring to it. So glad to be with you today. Yeah, here in Fort Collins, Colorado, a beautiful sunny morning finally. I can see the snow on the mountain peaks. We've had a lot of snow in the mountains in the last week. Some of you might have seen that on the national news. So we're getting a late snow, which is really pretty. But today's supposed to be about 70, so it's all nice here. Moved here after leaving Caterpillar and Peoria. So I was the chief economist at Caterpillar for many years in Illinois, and then had an opportunity to start the corporate university. So then I led Caterpillar University. And then when I decided to retire from Caterpillar, we moved out here to Colorado, started writing some books and started teaching. And then we had a chance to start the Center for Talent Reporting, which is a nonprofit dedicated to improving the measurement, reporting, and management of learning in particular, and human capital in general. So we've been at that for the last 10 years. And so that brings us to today.
That's a heck of a journey. Before we jump in, and measurement's what we're talking about here today, but I would like to know how you go from being chief economist to opening or starting up the training program as Caterpillar University. That seems like an extreme lateral move, a heck of a
extreme. And maybe a lot of our listeners have had a similar opportunity. So you're doing something. Now, as an economist, I wasn't always right. Economists make a lot of bad forecasts, so I can't claim I was always right. But I'd like to think I knew what I was doing, and I could supervise the function and settle disputes, so I could continue doing what I was doing. Or I had this opportunity to start Caterpillar University. And that happened because one day they said, Dave, why don't you go ahead and talk to the head of HR? Okay, fine. And he says, Dave, we decided to start a corporate university, and we want you to do that. And I said, what is a corporate university? So they said, here's this study. It was a Friday afternoon. Read it over the weekend and tell us Monday morning whether you'd like to start this corporate university. And I said, well, I don't know anything about corporate training. They said, we know, you'll be fine. So you've got a decision here. Stay where you're comfortable, if not perfect, or jump into a whole new area, which I certainly was not an expert in. And everyone working for me would know that I didn't know what I was doing. And how would I then decide on approaches or settle disputes when I didn't even know the field? But I am a little bit of a risk taker, and I do like change, and I like creating something. I'm more of a creator than a maintainer. So it was a challenge. And anyway, I had bad mouth training at Caterpillar in the past, saying often it's a waste of time, and I didn't think much of it.
This is your torture. It's
So
your payback.
maybe this is all just in the end that they said, okay, Dave, you go do something with this. You figure it out. So that's what I did. And I loved it. I mean, I loved the field. That's why I retired. I didn't go back into economics. I wanted to stay in this field because I love this field. And I think there's so much we can do in this field. You know, the whole training field is so young compared to other professions.
Yeah.
So maybe we start in 1945 when ATD was founded, and really coming out of World War II and the need for training. But still, under 100 years, we are a young profession, which means we don't have everything figured out yet. In fact, we don't have a lot of things figured out yet.
Some would argue as to whether or not we're even a profession.
Oh,
But that's a whole nother question.
That's part of what drives us, drives me, and drives the Center for Talent Reporting, is trying to make us more professional. Because a profession would have a framework. Biology has a framework. Chemistry has a periodic table. Accountants have generally accepted accounting principles. What do we have? If we are truly a profession, we don't yet have a common language, common framework, but it's okay. We're young, we're growing. So that's part of the contribution we've tried to make.
Very cool. That's an awesome origin story in terms of your L&D existence. That's brilliant. Yeah,
It's fresh.
yeah, and it's the most dramatic. We often find, lots of folks who move sideways into our world, people who are, experts in something, and then they get asked to train in that or something, and then discover their passion and their love for L&D. But yours is the most extreme lateral move that I think I've encountered yet, which is fabulous. Very cool, and thanks for sharing that with us. We are here to talk measurement today. And you have a pair of books out with ATD Press in the past year. And that's kind of the focus of what we're doing here today. Maybe let's just pop those up into your video feed, just so folks have a visual. So
this is our first one, called Measurement Demystified, came out a year ago, where we try to lay out all the concepts and the framework for you. And then just in January, we followed that up with the field guide. So the field guide is where we have the exercises, the case studies, and ability to apply it in your own organization. So we go from the concepts to the application in both of these. And as I said, it's really in both of these that we've tried to capture everything we've learned over the last now 12 years working on these talent development reporting principles. So if accountants have GAAP, what do we have? So we'd like to think we have TDRP, talent development reporting principles, something on the measurement and reporting space that, honestly makes it easier for us to do our job.
yeah, I mean, so many organizations that have training programs in place, and reporting is largely completions and or maybe test scores, for example. That's the simplest data that there is for folks in our field to collect, and we have tools that do those and generate nice reports for us. What are sort of some of the key things though that you think people should be focusing on measuring?
Well, let me bring up a little graphic here.
Sure.
And use that to answer that question. All right. So if everyone can see this, here's the framework. And again, if we want this to be adopted, it has to be simple, easy to remember. So we've got 3 different categories here. Our suggestion is start with the reasons to measure. So if you're putting together a measurement reporting strategy, you're asking yourself, well, what measures should I be collecting? What should I do with them once I have them? Let's just start down at the bottom. Let's be clear on why we're going to measure. And we come up with a list of 15 or 20 different reasons to measure. But for a framework, we wanted to put it in simple terms. Let's say we agree on 4 broad categories. I might measure to inform, meaning just to answer your question, share the activity that we're doing. I might measure to monitor. Monitor is where you have a threshold in mind. Maybe your level 1 participant reaction has been running above 80% favorable, and you want to make sure it stays above 80% favorable. We would say you're monitoring that to make sure it remains above 80%. A lot of people want to measure to evaluate a program's effectiveness and impact. So that's a third good reason to measure. And by the way, that evaluate reason to measure is where most of the books in the profession have been written. So the Kirkpatricks and Phillips, more than 100 books, are all focused on just that reason to measure, evaluation. And finally, some would measure to manage. That's the highest level reason to measure. Manage is when you want to achieve a certain target or you want to improve beyond where you've been historically. So I've reached 10,000 employees in the past. I want to reach 15,000 in the future. We have an application rate of 50%. We want to push that to 70%. If you want to push it to a new level, move the needle, then you need to manage. And that's a whole different ballgame than monitoring or informing. Takes a lot more work. So start with the reasons to measure. Have those in mind when you talk to your users. So get clarity up front from your users, both inside your department and outside, why they want to measure, what they think they want, what they're going to do with it. Try to put it in one of those buckets, because that will then help us in both measurement selection and in reporting selection. So with that as a basis, you're now ready to begin to create your measurement strategy in the middle of the diagram. And because we have so many measures in learning, Chris, you mentioned a few of the very common ones. We have more than 170 measures for learning. We have more than 700 for HR in total. We don't lack measures. We've got a lot of measures in our field. The challenge is finding the right ones for you for the coming year. So to make it easier, we say bucket your measures into 3 categories. You have outcome measures. Those are the impact of your learning on corporate goals, like if you can help increase sales or reduce injuries or improve product quality. So those would be outcomes. Effectiveness measures are about the quality of your programs. Think of the Kirkpatrick Phillips levels 1, 2, 3, and 5. So participant reaction, learning, application, ROI, those are all effectiveness measures. By the way, outcomes would be the level 4 measures. So we give that its own category. And then on the right-hand side, you've got efficiency measures, which is where the profession has started with measurement. So activity measures, the quantity measures, number of participants, number of courses, number of hours, completion rates. All those are efficiency measures. Very important, very fundamental. So the profession almost in this diagram starts from the right. We've been collecting efficiency measures forever. Don't stop doing that. Keep doing that. But we want to add to that the levels 1, 2, 3, and 5. And on the left-hand side, where appropriate, add those outcome measures whenever you have a chance to support one of your company's high-level goals. So that's the measurement strategy, and we want balance. We want a balance of effectiveness and efficiency measures. You should have several of both, and then sometimes you will add an outcome measure, but not always. And then at the top, just to round this out, is the reporting strategy. And we don't know of anybody else who has really tried to put reporting in a framework. So we're breaking new ground up here and trying to tie that back to the reasons to measure. So on the left-hand side, you see scorecards and dashboards. We all know what they look like. Dashboards, we mean the more visual ones, or the ones that have drill down capabilities. Scorecards, just a table of numbers. And these are both fine if the user simply wants to inform or to monitor. Someone says, I want to see how many participants, how many courses we had in each month of the year. Great, a scorecard would work fine. A more senior leader says, I don't want all the detail, I just want to see the big picture. Give me year-to-date totals. A dashboard would probably be good for them. program evaluation reports is a special format we suggest for using when you want to report out the results of a program. So the program's over, the year's done, and you want to share the results of the program. And then you don't want to use a scorecard or dashboard for that. There's a separate format for that. And then let me skip over to the right on management reports. If you want to manage, if you want to drive your measures to higher values than ever had before, you need a special type of report. And this type of report would look just like your colleagues in sales or manufacturing use. It's going to have the plan or the targets you want to achieve. It's going to have how you're doing year to date compared to plan, so you know if you're on plan or not. And then it's going to have a forecast for how you think the year is going to end if you don't take any further special action, and a comparison of that forecast to plan. If the forecast shows you falling short of plan, then that's your indicator that you've got to intervene and see what you can do to get back on plan to deliver the promised results. So that's our framework, reasons to measure, where you should start, and then talk about measures in the 3 categories. You know, accountants have 4 categories of measures: revenue, expense, assets, and liabilities. They also have hundreds of measures, but they bucket them into 4 categories. It makes it a lot easier to talk about them. We're suggesting something similar. For learning and HR in general, we'll have 3 categories. And then, depending on the reason to measure and the user's needs, that should provide you guidance into how to share those results. So that's the framework.
It's awesome because it helps give our industry an opportunity to be more businesslike. I think we talk about this, and I hear it talked about at events and things like that in the past, where one of the things that I think that keeps us from becoming more respected in different corporations and in the business is that we're not very good at speaking business, right? And it's having that, just to hear you talk, this is exactly the way I think, you know, managers, CLOs, whatever, need to talk about these types of things. But I think of all the years Chris and I have been doing this and all of the people that we've had on the show, you are probably the first person to very coherently and clearly talk like you belong in the room with the other executives.
Well, that was one thing I could bring to the field, right? I mean, I couldn't bring learning expertise. I've never designed a course, so I can't do instructional design. I've never really delivered courses except in graduate school. So what I could—
And now everybody's leaving the chat right now. Sorry.
With my business expertise from that side of the house. And to your point, the profession does need that. So we need to add to our toolkit. It isn't either or, right? I mean, the best professionals in learning are going to be those who have expertise in learning and all the domains of learning, but also have business acumen and can speak the language of business and can make the case, whether that's just with a goal owner during needs analysis and designing the course, or whether you're the CLO and making the business case for your department for the coming year. You need to speak the language of business. In fact, I think that is one of the biggest reasons why when a recession comes, learning is often the first to get cut and is likely to get cut more proportionally than other departments. Why? Because your CFO and CEO don't really know what value we're bringing. They're approving, recs, and they're approving budget, but they're not quite sure what they're getting for all this. They do know what they get from sales. They do know what they get from manufacturing. And not only that, but they know that leaders in those organizations are running their departments with business discipline, meaning they have a plan with specific measurable goals. They're not guaranteed of getting them, and often they don't, but they're trying for that every month, and their performance pay is probably based on whether they achieve those stated goals. And in L&D and HR, we typically have not had that. We haven't had business plans. We haven't had specific measurable goals. We haven't been held accountable. So from a senior leader's viewpoint, if you have to decide between giving money to sales and manufacturing or to training, well, I can understand why they would prefer the other ones. In fact, funny story, after I got named, I walked into the wing. At that time, it was handling training for Central America. CAT U would be global, but that was the predecessor organization. So I walked into the wing and people came up to me. You know, they said, "Oh, congratulations, Dave, I'm so-and-so." Now, I knew what they really were thinking. Like, why in the world didn't they have one of us be this new position of CLO? Why'd they bring in an economist who knows nothing? So I appreciated that. And then they said, "Could we recommend some books for you to read?" Since I didn't know what I was doing, I, of course, said yes. And then they said, "Now, Dave, we've talked to some people that worked for you in your previous organization. And they said that you established goals and you held them accountable. Now, Dave, you have to understand, you're in HR now, and we don't have goals. We don't have specific measurable goals. And we just want you to understand that we will come in every day and we'll work hard for you, but we're not going to do goals." And in fact, I had one person retire before they would set specific measurable goals for me. And I just asked him, since I don't know what you're doing, you write your own goals for the year and then just let me see them. And they said, "No, I will not give you any goals because I might be held accountable. You're going to use that as an excuse to dismiss me." I said, "You're writing your own goals. Just write some up. If you're reasonable, just give them to me." I said, I went through this for a week. And I said, "By Monday, you got to come in and talk to me. If you don't have goals, I'm going to fire you." He didn't have goals. He said, "I'm going to retire then. I'm not going to let you, I'm not going to have goals." So it was a funny culture. I don't think that is the case most often now, but that was the kind of the culture that, you know, we don't want to be accountable. And that accountable thing actually is still out there to some extent at a high level. A lot of people don't want to put specific measurable goals out because they might not make them. Well, welcome to the real world. Colleagues don't have any guarantee of making their sales goals, making their manufacturing goals. Look what happens when there's a pandemic. All the goals go out the window, but okay. Yeah. Still, that's what's expected. And so because we haven't operated like that, I don't think we have the same confidence from our senior leaders that others have. But it's something we can get. We can get there. We can learn this, and we can be willing to be accountable.
It's got to be hard when you're, I think, when you're at that university level, when you're creating a corporate university, right? It's you're almost separated a little bit from the business too, right? And so that's got to make it a little bit harder to get more connected and to get those, okay, you know, the things that we do for you as a corporate university, the things that we do for manufacturing and for the sales team and for all that kind of stuff, right? You know, how do we, you know, you really do have to stay connected with those departments and say, hey, how have we helped you, right? Or how, you know, what measurements do you have that you follow that we can possibly help you impact positively?
Right. So 2 things on that. One, we at CAT U, we were set up from the beginning as our primary remit or charter is to support the goals of the company. So not to do just general education or discretionary, but to support sales, to support quality, support the manufacturing. So that means you need a business planning process, which I started with the CEO in August, and we were on a calendar year, fiscal year. So I would go to the CEO and ask what the goals are going to be for the following year. He knew what they were going to be. And I want to know the priority order, and I want to know who the goal owner is. Then in September, I'm going to go talk to each goal owner, like the head of sales, especially if it's a new goal owner or a new goal. And we're going to do high-level needs analysis. Does it look like learning has a role to play or not? What do you think? Well, yes, I think it could. And oh, by the way, for all the years I was in that position, our CEO had 7 goals, and learning could support all 7 every year. So now let's discuss with the senior leader to begin with, but later with their staff, and our staff will get to know their staff. And if learning has a role to play, then we'll come up with some programs, right, that we think would impact that and help achieve the company goal. And we're going to work with that goal owner to get agreement on what that program is, on what the planned impact is, on what effort it's going to take, and on the roles and responsibilities for both parties. So I actually had a 2-page contract. Page 1 was what you would do for you. Page 2 was what you as the goal owner and the supervisors in your organizations have to do to make this successful. Because even being new to the field as I was, it was apparent to me that L&D can't do all this by itself. The target audience employees don't work for me. I can't make them do anything, mainly applying it after they get back from taking the great training. Only their supervisors can make them do it. So it's going to be a joint effort all the way along. And a lot of goal owners at Caterpillar didn't understand that. They thought maybe after they got Cat U engaged, their job was done and they could toss it over the fence and we'd take it from there. No, we can't take it from there. And I guarantee you have a negative ROI if that's the thinking, because the application rate will be terrible. And that's one of the greatest embarrassments in our profession. You know, we have a scrap rate, 1 minus the application rate, of 40 to 80%. Now, if that were 4 to 8%, that would be okay. 40 to 80%. At Caterpillar, in a manufacturing plant, if we scrapped 50% of the raw product that came into the plant, we'd be out of business. If we scrap 5%, we would not be competitive. So this is another area in learning. We've got to get the application rates up, the scrap rates down, if we're going to run this like a business. So you need right from the get-go, both for an individual, maybe requesting training, and just for your general plan, you need to put together a business plan for the coming year, which reflects all these proactive upfront discussions with goal owners. So we didn't wait for the phone to ring or the email to come and saying, would you please help us? We went out and we talked to all the goal owners. And so consequently, we had about 90% of our budget committed at the start of the year. So we could do a lot of good planning. So I think it's important to do that upfront work to get the planning done. I think it's more important today than ever. As we're talking about designing for application, I think the old days of just maybe designing with the hope of getting a good level 1 participant reaction, if that was your goal, that's not a goal. I mean, this is supposed to make a difference.
We want people to like us so badly. Chris, it looks like we got some questions.
Yeah. Some questions and some great comments in the chat. So I wanted to start with Kim's comment. In ADDIE, the classic instructional design model that so many of us are familiar with, the waterfall places evaluation bracket measurement at the end of the process. Whereas these kind of conversations need to take place during the initial meetings, during the analysis, and maybe even design, because they inform the design. And what you were just describing was you went out and you found out the goals, and therefore the evaluation follows.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say it necessarily follows in that respect. I think measurement should never be an end in itself, and we often get in trouble by presenting measurement as an end in itself, like asking for a budget for measurement. I would never do that. That makes it sound like they're doing us a favor by granting us a budget to do measurement. No, if you're going to manage a program, you cannot manage without measures. So measures are the means to the end, not the end. And to her point, yes, you need to have this whole performance consulting discussion up front. And that's where you set the goals for all the measures. So I'm going to set an impact measure. Like, we're going to agree that if this program is properly designed, developed, delivered, and reinforced, it could lead to 3% higher sales all by itself. So that's now our bogey. This learning will lead to 3% higher sales. Now, what do we have to do to achieve that? Well, I've got to get 150 people to take the course by a certain date early in the year. I've got the completion rate that's good. And on the effectiveness side, I want a reasonable level 1. If there's a learning test involved, we want the people to pass it. But most importantly, we want a high application rate. And we're going to agree with the goal owner up front on the targeted application rate, let's say 80%. Because it's their supervisors, primarily, they're going to make that happen with help from us. Mm-hmm. So we're going to agree on the outcome and the target levels for the key efficiency and effectiveness measures. And we're going to capture those in a management report every month that looks just like other business reports they're getting and share that with the goal owner. So measurement isn't an afterthought, and it doesn't come in the evaluation phase. It's actually what's used every month to manage the program.
Very cool.
Beautiful.
Debbie's got a couple of comments in the chat here. I'm trying to decide which one to go with first. Let's go through your second one. How do you derive learning contribution to high-level organizational goals when there are so many factors that contribute to the success and failure of those goals at that level?
Great. Yeah, great question. So we have a process that works in alignment with the goal owner, where you step them through it. If you just ask them what that percent should be, they would have no way of answering it. So it's really pretty simple. You just say, please list for me all the factors you believe are going to contribute to you achieving this 10% increase in sales. And let's say, well, the economy has to cooperate with us. We're bringing a new product out. I've got a new sales incentive in place, and we're doing this training. So to her point, there is more than just learning going on here. Okay, so now we've got the factors, 4 or 5 factors. Then we ask the goal owner, prioritize those for me. What do you think's the top of the list, then next, then next? So put them in order. Now, once they're in order, assign each a percentage contribution. Has to add up to 100% at the bottom. Now, this is a planning exercise. I don't need to go to the single decimal point here. I mean, we're just trying to get close. Like, would it be reasonable for sales? The economy is going to be a 50% contributor, probably. Okay, so of the things we can control, the other 50%, then where does learning play in? Where does a new product play in? Where does a new sales incentive system play in? And the goal owner will put down some percentages. And let's say they assign 20% to the sales training. Well, that 20% is now the planned contribution from learning to the sales goal. So 20% times 10% would be a 2% increase in sales due just to training. Now, again, this is a plan. It's like anything else in a business plan. All we know for sure is that it's wrong. That's all we know for sure. But we still do business plans because we'll accomplish more with them than without them. It forces you to think about what resources are required to accomplish that goal. And we just hope we're close. But if you think about it, the higher the impact you and the goal owner agree on, the greater the effort it's going to take by both parties, hours and dollars. Plus, the earlier in your fiscal year it has to be deployed. You can't have a big impact from a program if it comes out in Q4. It's got to come out in Q1. So
there you go.
To answer her question, we said it's a discussion with the goal owner, but you need to facilitate it. It's a little process. But that's how you do it.
Yeah. And another question then from Debbie, can you talk more about the outcomes category and how you look at that at the enterprise or full Caterpillar Academy? Can you share what the top 3 key outcomes you report back to your CEO and how you derive that?
Sure. So at Caterpillar, our number one goal when I was there was always revenue. Now, the number associated with it changed. Increased sales by 10% this year, 12% next year, 6% the following. But increased revenue was always the number one goal. After that, and it's been a while since I was there now, but reducing injuries, we were in a manufacturing organization, reducing injuries was at the top 3 as well. Another one, the top 3 was some measure of productivity. So you've got those goals you get from the CEO, and then if you want to measure at the end of the program to see what it was. So let's say in our case, we thought and we were working towards this 20% contribution from learning to the increase in sales. Now, the question is, okay, year's over now. How did it all turn out? You thought learning would lead to a 2% increase in sales. What did it actually turn out to be? So Jack Phillips, who pioneered the isolated impact approach, which is what contrasts with the Kirkpatrick's business results. Kirkpatrick doesn't get to isolated impact. Phillips does get to isolated impact. There's 5 ways you can do it. Using a control group is the best way, it's the gold standard. Sometimes there are naturally occurring control groups when you can't get to everyone in the target audience right away. Caterpillar, I never had that, so I couldn't use that. There are some statistical methods, but those can be hard to use too. The most commonly used method to isolate the impact of learning, and the one we used, is the participant estimation methodology, which takes into account the subjectivity of asking participants what the impact was. So you ask the participants, what do they believe learning contributed to their increase in performance, higher sales in this case? And you can automate this, give them a scale, a decile scale, 0% through 100%. They'll say 60%. Okay. Now, given that's an estimate, how confident are you in that estimate you just gave me? 0 to 100% again. Let's say, well, I'm 50% confident. Okay. We're going to take 60%, multiply it by 50%. We're going to score them at 30% instead of the 60%. We're going to cut it down because it is a guess. You need to do this for at least 30, a random sample of at least 30, and then average those out. That's called the confidence adjusted isolated impact. The nice thing about this is no statistics is required. You can automate it, and it is good enough for our purposes. Is it good enough for a journal article? No, but I'm not writing a journal article. So do you use this in a court of law? No, but I'm not testifying in court. I'm trying to run CAT-U. I'm trying to determine within a reasonable range what impact we had. Did we come close to that 2% increase in sales that we thought would be reasonable? Because I want to learn from that. I want to use this not just to prove our value, but for continual improvement. And if I was way off, I want to understand, okay, was it just a bad forecast? Was it bad execution? What can I take away from this so next year when I set my targets, I do a better job of accomplishing them? And if you follow this cycle a couple of years, you get better at this. The first year, you may be all over the place, but that's fine. You got to start somewhere, but you'll get better year after year, which is exactly what your colleagues like in sales forecasting do. The first time they ever make a forecast, it's probably way off, but they learn from it and they get better. If you never start keeping score, you'll never get better.
It sounds like you had a lot of great support from the other executives, though, to give you that freedom to be confident, to say, for them to know that, you know what, we're just going to kind of eyeball this at first and get as close as we can.
But executives do that all the time. That's one of the things that I think it holds our profession back. We're worried about like proving to the decimal point some ROI or impact. But it's a false worry. As you get to a higher and higher level of executive in a company like Caterpillar, your whole world is making estimates and forecasts. And they're always wrong. And you're just hoping to be close enough to make the right decision. That's your whole world. The world of certainty was left behind long ago. And people in HR and learning need to understand that. Don't be dissuaded by this worry that I'm not going to be nailing it down to the decimal point, when that's not their world. In fact, if you came in and claimed you had done that, you would lose credibility because they know that's not how the world works.
They call bullshit.
Yes, they would.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Such clarity. I appreciate hearing that from somebody who's been sitting in that hot seat so much. I can't even tell you. That's awesome. That's the best. Where are the, so is that measurement and that I forget what you called it, but boy, it sounded like it had a really long, impressive name.
Confidence adjusted isolated impact.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It sounds like it could be a good article, but I'm assuming that's in the book somewhere.
It is.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
It's in the book, and Jack Phillips came up with this. It's in his original 1983 handbook, now in its 5th edition. But he pioneered that approach.
Yeah, for us to be able to use those, to get that kind of information today, that's the first time I've ever heard of it. So that's, And not that that's really saying anything, but I can't. I know. Anybody else in the chat ever hear of it? I don't know. I can't. If everybody else in the chat says, "Oh no, duh, Brent," of course we all know
they won't
that.
say that. And the point is, it's accessible. Anybody can do it. So it's just math. It's just arithmetic, no statistics, and it's easy to do, and it represents the word of the participants, right? So it's not that you came up with this on your own. It's the sales reps who were taking this course. And oh, by the way, once I got their average confidence adjusted isolated impact, I would run it by the sales supervisors, and then I would run it by the head of sales. I'd like them to sign off on this. And usually they'll say, well, if that's what my people said, yeah, that makes sense. And now you've got it. Now you're bulletproof. And when you take that into a meeting, and you say, yeah, I use the industry standard methodology. That's how I did it at Caterpillar. We followed the industry standard methodology, and I ran it by the head of sales.
Nice.
Your CEO and CFO aren't going to question that. So you're done.
As we're reaching our last few moments here, give us some parting advice or some motivation to like cheer everybody up and make them feel good about needing to understand measuring and data and analytics and what they can do to get to this point that you're at.
Well, I think it is one of our greatest opportunities. And I think we all want to be more professional. We want to help the profession advance. So we need to mature. We all start at the same place. I'm going to count participants. I'm going to count courses, count hours. And I'm going to look at level 1, the smile sheet. Okay, so fine, start there, but don't stop there. And the good news is today versus 10 or 15 years ago, it is easier than ever out there because of tools like SurveyMonkey, because of vendors and consultants out in the space who know all of this. It's easier than ever before to go to higher levels of efficiency measures, which I would say, the completion rate. And I'd like to know what % of your courses were designed and developed on time. If you're running Learning Like a Business, they remember when you gave them a date. You may not remember it. I guarantee they remember it. So if you're going to run Learning Like a Business, you better have recorded that, and you better be measuring whether you're a reliable business partner to them, and of course, capture your cost. So if you're not already doing % on time completion and cost, add those to your list. On the effectiveness measure side, we're doing levels 1, level 2, where tests make sense, but push to level 3. You can add a question on intent to apply the content you learned easily to your post-event survey, right? Your post-event survey, you have all the level 1 questions. Did you like the content? Did you like the instructor? Would you recommend it? Add a level 3 question to that. You're already doing the level 1 survey. Just add 1 question on intent to apply. What % of this content do you think you'll be able to apply on the job? Now, if you have the resources, do a follow-up study later and ask them what % of content they actually did apply. But if you don't have the resource to do that, at least add the intent to apply question to the level 3. And if you want to go a step further and get to level 4 using the participant estimation methodology, you can add 1 more question to that existing survey given right at the end of the course and ask them the 2 questions. So 2 questions more about what % improvement this is going to lead to in their performance and how confident they are in that. And then you can get level 4. But at least if you're not doing level 3 today, get to level 3, because that's where we begin to get real. If your great training is not applied, it is scrap. It is a waste of time. No matter how well designed it was, if it isn't applied, you didn't do any good. So we've got to know what the application rate is, and then we've got to drive the scrap rate down. If you can do that, then move on to level 4, the outcome measure. Use just those 2 more questions to begin to get at that. But we can do this. So it's not insurmountable. We can do this.
Yeah.
People just need to get started and then keep moving. And don't sell this as measurement for measurement's sake. It is what we need to do to manage to deliver greater results for your current budget and staffing. And
I love
what
it.
company wouldn't want to deliver
Exactly.
greater results?
For sure. It's very easy to see a
Fantastic.
framework like that and think about you have to have this whole thing in place, but you've given us there at least some starting points to make sure that people can begin moving in that direction. Show us the books again so that folks
Oh,
know what they're
books.
looking for. If they
Measurement
want to
Demystified,
take it a little bit further.
get that one, and then get the
Yep.
field guide so
Oh,
you
yes.
have practice in applying it. It'll boost your confidence in
Very
applying
cool.
these concepts.
Indeed, indeed. Well, also,
David,
don't forget. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, David, drop your contact info into the chat there where folks might be able to find you further as well. I think we
I
did have a
will.
link earlier. I think there's a link earlier in the chat too to where the folks can find the book. I'm popping in the usual note that Domino Learning System sponsors Idiotic every week. And if that's of interest to learn more about Domino One, there's a link there that you can check out. And we
Otherwise-
have,
Oh,
I see
sorry.
Brent's popped in the chat for the LinkedIn group as well. So we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks,
Thanks.
David. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much, David. Yeah,
Goodbye.
awesome conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Cheers, everybody.